Okie dokie artichoke. What is going on, beautiful people? I'm Connor from Pittsburgh. The 4 questions that I selected for today's live are going to be the following. We're improving libido, talk about increasing weight when it comes to our strength, fixing clicking joints. So last but not least, we're gonna wrap up with how to best manage our gym time whenever we're doing our workouts. And if you wanna let me know what your name is, where you're from, whenever you're tuning in, I'll give you a quick shout out if I see you on the comments, okay? First question is this. What is the best way to improve our libido? What is the best way to improve our sex life? Started off juicy. So the first thing that I would say, 1, increase your body fat percentage. Anytime you're really low in body fat percentage, your libido typically is going to correlate to whatever that body fat percentage is. The way we go about doing that in a healthy way of doing that would be to consistently eat in a moderate caloric surplus. A moderate daily caloric surplus, increasing our libido by increasing our body fat percentage and combining that with a regular exercise routine. Typically with body fat percentage, I'll speak on that. Probably not the healthiest if we're staying at single digit body fat percentage, if we're talking men. If you are sort of sitting at single digit body fat percentage year round, it's probably not the healthiest thing to do. And also on the flip side of that, it's probably not the healthiest if you're sort of above 20 or 30% in body fat percentage. For me, I think a good healthy body fat percentage for men is typically anywhere between 10 to 20%. That's what I personally try and stick to. So, and for women, you can typically just add 10% to that. So it's probably not the healthiest if you're a woman and you're staying anywhere between 10 to 20% year round when it comes to your body fat percentage. And then on the flip side of that, it's probably not the healthiest if you're anywhere above 30 or 40% as well. So probably a healthy body fat percentage for women as far as maintaining a healthy libido would probably be anywhere between 20 to 30%. And on the other side of that healthy range for men to kind of maintain the libido would probably be a body fat percentage anywhere between 10 to 20%. And my second answer to that would also be to improving sleep patterns. Interesting statistic that I was listening to. I was listening to Andy Huberman's podcast, and they were talking about healthy sleep cycles and healthy sleep patterns and everything. Because for every extra 1 hour of sleep that you get, your interest in becoming sexually intimate actually increases by 14%. Take that with however you want to take it. If you can get your sleep dialed in, maybe 75 to 80% of your nights, that's going to be such a game changer when it comes to maintaining a healthy libido. I try to sort of keep my bedroom, if we can do this, keeping our bedroom a space that all we're really doing is sleeping. Or on the other side, if you're married, and you have a partner, you're dating someone, keeping your bedroom for sleep and sex. But yeah, that's typically what I try and do to kind of make sure my sleep patterns are okay. Ideally, we're getting anywhere between 6 to 8 hours. Ideally, we're getting 8 hours of sleep per night to kind of maintain a healthy libido night over night. And ideally, 4 or 5 nights out of the week, it would be around 8 hours of sleep, consistently. If you're like me and you wake up in the middle of the night and pee, at least once a night, sometimes twice a night, then something that I do is I try and get a gallon of water in every single day, and I'm trying to get my gallon in typically before 6 hours before I go to bed. So I'm not having to finish and just shove down a bunch of water just to get my gallon intake for the day, because then that's going to impact my sleep. That's going to impact everything else that comes off of not getting a good night's sleep and a good night's rest. So those are some of the things that I personally do, and those are another an additional piece that probably could help you maintain a healthy libido. The last thing that I would say is there's supplementation that you can take too. Typically, that's going to be the last thing that I recommend if we can't do these naturally. I'm not too well versed on this. I did work at GNC all throughout college for about 5 years, every single weekend. Some of the supplements you can take as far as libido go. L-arginine is going to help with blood flow. Maca root, this herb called maca root, that's going to helps you maintain a kind of stable and healthy metabolism overall. So that's kind of what maca root does. Fenugreek is another herb that kind of creates a good hormonal balance for you. So it's kind of these peripheral or fringe things that sort of help with kind of maintaining an overall like healthy libido. If you want to think of it like that, all these things like on the perimeter of it, if this like in the center is like your libido, right? You're trying to like maintain it healthy, want to not like get it out of whack or anything like that, or get it too low, right? So those are the things that I would personally say would be maintaining a healthy body fat percentage, a regular exercise routine, healthy sleep patterns, and then also there is supplementation if you want to go that route too, if you feel like you've done like 1, 2, and 3 and it's still like not like the best for you. Question number 2, the highlight number 2 that we're going to talk about is, what are the signs that you should increase the amount that you are lifting when it comes to strength training in the gym? If you want to be a little bit more structured when it comes to your progress within the gym, what I would say is, we have to ask this question, like, how do we actually track our progress when it comes to strength in the gym, and we're not just kind of like going off of memory and like going off of how we're feeling that day. Sometimes if we feel like we've like plateaued when it comes to our strength, a lot of the times it's a question of, the question to ask would be like, am I doing too little of volume, if you want to think of it in that way? Like, am I exercising too little, or am I exercising too much throughout the week? Am I doing enough volume? Am I doing enough, giving my muscles enough stimuli that I'm causing them to, forcing them to grow? Like, is that the issue? Like, I'm not doing enough, from where we're at to get up here? Like, am I not doing enough to kind of, close this gap? Or am I doing too much? Like I'm way over here, I'm like doing way too much volume. My central nervous system's not recovering enough to basically get me back on track. Past maybe like 3, 4, 5 years of, working out in the gym, where I got to a point where I was doing way too much volume and I wasn't recovering enough. Good sign that you should increase the weights whenever you're in the gym is going to be, I like to use this system called RPEs. So rate of perceived exertion is going to be a good way to sort of track how much a given weight during a set is actually impacting you. Let's say you are doing a bench press, or you're doing squats, for example, for 5 reps or something like that, right? And let's say it probably makes sense to do it. It's probably just easiest to explain this, like if we're doing 10 reps. So let's say we get to like our 10th rep on squats or something like that, and we get to rep 10. I don't even know if that's the best way to describe it. Who cares? Let's just say that. So let's just say we're doing 10 reps of squats with like 135 on the bar or something like that, right? So let's say we get to rep 10 and we cannot do any more reps. 10 is like the maximum amount of reps that we can do without our form failing and causing a chance that we would like injure ourselves. Like, we do not want that. If we get to 10 reps, can't do any more reps, we rack the bar, that's going to be something called an RPE 10, or also a reps in reserve, which is like basically the RPE equivalent, just the opposite of, it's going to be an RPE 10, but it's also going to be an RIR 0. So basically it means you have 0 reps left in the tank, you can't do any more reps, you hit absolute failure, like without failing, properly doing the reps. When it comes to compound exercises, so think of any kind of exercise that you're recruiting multiple muscle groups, right? So if you think of squats, it's, pretty much all of your entire lower body. So it's going to be, your quads, your hamstrings, your glutes, your calves, all of those. Squats are like the king of compound exercises for lower body. And then if you're thinking of upper body, think of anything like a bench press or overhead press that's recruiting multiple muscle groups to perform the exercise. So when it comes to compound movements, typically what I say is I would kind of shy away from doing RPE 10s, doing an RPE 9 and then racking the weight. So always kind of doing our sets, not to failure, because typically when we're doing compound exercises, we're going to be you're going to be more susceptible to failure. Intensity is going to be super high. So, that means basically percentage of what the weight that you're using is a percentage of your 1 rep max. Typically when we're doing compound movements, we're doing heavier weight, we're doing a higher intensity for that exercise. So meaning, we're doing heavier weight, it's going to be a little bit more susceptible to injury. So if we can kind of shy away from hitting absolute failure on compounds, in a perfect world, that's exactly what we would do. That's what I recommend to clients. Say we're doing 3 sets of 5 reps for squats or something like that, right? And you hit RPE 9s on every single one of those sets at 5 reps. Then typically what that means is you would be able to hit a 6th rep and then feel like you might fail, right? So what I would recommend is if you're hitting those 5 reps at RPE 9s, maybe that's even getting into an RPE 8 where you could eventually maybe hit a 7th rep, but I wouldn't recommend like going past that 6th rep or getting to that 7th rep even. Maybe at that point, that's whenever we increase the weight a little. Now, when it comes to isolation movements, what isolation movements are when it comes to exercises are any kind of movements that are only targeting like one specific muscle group, right? So if we're thinking like chest, like it'd be like chest flies. If it's triceps, typically it's gonna be like a tricep push down. If it's biceps, it'd be something like a bicep preacher curl. If it's like shoulders, it'd be a dumbbell lateral raise, or it'd be like a cable lateral raise. Like when it comes to single lateral raises, comes to lower body legs, it'd be something like a leg extension. It'd be something like a leg curl. For calves, it'd be something like a seated calf raise or a standing calf raise. So a good indicator that you should increase the weight when it comes to isolation movements is going to be, if we're thinking about that RPE scale again, typically when we're doing any isolation movement, the risk of injury is typically a lot lower than if we're doing compound movements. And that's because they're usually safer exercises, and you're not really putting your body in a position that you're going to be at risk of injuring yourself. Obviously, you can be kind of like reckless and go with reckless abandonment doing an exercise that you've never done before. But typically you're gonna not be in a position where it's gonna be as dangerous as a compound movement like squats would be, or bench press, or overhead press, or deadlift would be. So basically on that note, that's the reason why I typically recommend, if we want to go to failure, if we want to go to RPE 10s, then have freaking at it, like go crazy. I recommend going to RPE 10s, going to failure when it comes to isolation movements. And what I say for that, knowing when to increase the weight, if we're at the top of a rep range, let's say we're doing like 3 sets of 10 reps on lateral raises or something like that, right? If we're getting to a point where like 10 reps feels like failure to us, but then over time, week over week, or say like we're using like 20 pounds on dumbbells or something like that, right? Then if we're getting to a point where we're feeling like we could do 20 pounds for 12 reps or 20 pounds for 15 reps on both sides, then maybe that's the point where we still want to stay in that rep range. So we still want to be hitting 10 reps. We don't want to be doing anything more than that. We want to be staying at that rep range. If that's your goal and if that's your intention, you can progress at like any rep range, it doesn't really matter. But if we want to stay at 10 reps, then we're gonna have to increase the weight to make sure that we're failing at 10 reps and we're not failing at 12 reps and we're not failing at 15 or 20 reps. All right, so we're gonna wrap this up just talking about 2 quick ones. How do you fix joints that click painfully during exercise? If you're kind of doing any exercise and you're feeling like your joints clicking in your knees or your elbows, or your hips, or your ankles, or things like that, basically what that means is that typically that's going to be, your muscle around the bone, wherever that's happening. It could be your muscle, it could be your tendons around the bone are going to be very, very tight. And so whenever your muscles or tendons get very, very tight, they sort of, think of like a rubber band, right? And so whenever they get really tight around your bones, let's just say like for your knees, for example, what that clicking noise is really going to be the tendon or muscle rubbing up against the bone in whatever that area of your body is. Getting on a good, gentle, like stretching routine would be a good, I would say, recommendation for that. Typically, I'd probably recommend doing at least like 5 minutes before your physical exercise that you're doing for the day would be a good recommendation to do. And then maybe if you wanted to kind of add on to that, maybe you could kind of work on some mobility exercises. Maybe you could work on some foam rolling, maybe even incorporate some yoga in there. So the question is, how do I manage my gym time when I'm at the gym? So for example, I decided to go to the gym for an hour and end up spending about 1.5 to 2 hours in the gym. Any advice regarding that? Yes, I do. A good thing we can do is track our rest time. That's something that personally helps me a lot. And what I'll recommend on that is on compound exercises, what I like to do is Typically, I'll recommend a rest time anywhere between 2 to 2 minutes and 30 seconds between our sets. Or for isolation movements, typically what I recommend is anywhere between a minute to a minute 30 seconds to properly recover. This shirt is too small, I know, and it's from H&M, but yeah, that's all I got. Have a lovely rest of your day, and I'll see you soon. Peace.